Welcome to the Steady On Stronger Together podcast. I am your host, Angie Bauman. Today, I am welcoming Debbie Patrick as my guest. Debbie has lived in chronic pain for years after receiving a faulty hip replacement, which caused metal poisoning in her body. Along with pain, Debbie experienced symptoms like memory and vision loss before a doctor in Alaska finally accurately diagnosed her. Over time, Debbie was forced to let go of relationships, her home, and her work. I talked with Debbie about both the impact of living with chronic pain and the lessons that God has taught her through it. I was so encouraged by her outlook on life, and I believe that you will be too. So, Debbie, thank you so much for being here this morning. Almost afternoon in Southern Illinois, not quite yet, but Debbie comes to us from the Seattle, Washington area, and she is a writer. Do you proudly wear that name tag yet? That's one of the things we talk about in Flourish.
I don't know how close I am to getting there, but yes, I'm working on it.
I laugh because sometimes I put mine on and take it off, but she is a writer. I'm going to put that name tag on her today. She's a writer and a wife and a mother of two daughters, one of which that I just met a few moments ago as we were trying to get the technical problems solved. And she is a delightful friend that I have made through the Flourish Writers community. And those who follow stuff on Steady On know that I talk about Flourish Writers all the time because it has been such an encouraging home for me. First, just kind of as a spectator, if you will, as I was kind of watching other people, formulate their books and their ministries and all that. But now, after about a year and a half, I have met some people who I really sincerely call friends, like yourself, Debbie. So I'm delighted to have you on today, and I've been looking forward to this discussion. It's something I think I saw a post of yours, and I will get to introducing you here in just a minute better. I think I saw a post of yours that had a percentage of how many people deal with chronic pain. That was just recent, right? You remember?
50 million in the United States.
50 million?
Yes, 88%, 8% live with disability every day with chronic pain that is severe, that it has affected their life. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So one, you're not alone in this. And one of the things that we really want to do today is encourage others, if they deal with chronic pain, that they are not alone either. And one of the things that Debbie and I talked about as we were kind of preparing for this interview is that chronic pain in your life is physical. And in a lot of people, the people that you're talking about, their lives. But I think a lot of what we're going to talk about today also, in terms of our connection with Jesus, that can encourage us is not only if you have physical pain, but also if you're in a long-term emotional situation that I would call chronic emotional pain too. So for those of you who feel like you identify with that, I think you will definitely find something to pick up through this conversation as well. So Debbie so we've gotten to know each other through Flourish Writers, and I'm going to give kind of Debbie the very short version of what you've been through from what you told me. And I just want to put a little asterisk by that, because I've been through some difficult things in my life too. And what I'm going to share with the people who are watching and listening does not begin to scratch the surface of what you've been through. And I just want to acknowledge that straight off the bat. But Debbie had a hip replacement after a soccer injury in 2006, which eventually led to 2 hip replacement surgeries, 2 on each side. Right. And through some faulty products that we're going to talk about, and finally a diagnosis of metal poisoning, which has affected her organs and her brain. She had struggles with memory loss, with vision, nerve pain, and just lives in constant pain. And I put in the comments, actually, I put it in the place that we're not live now, actually, because I put on the other platform, I put a link to a documentary on Netflix called The Bleeding Edge. And I'll link it again in the comments here when we're done. But I actually watched that documentary over the weekend, Debbie, to learn more about what you've been through. And so I'll link that, because anyone who's interested, that is part of how Debbie got to a diagnosis as she watched that documentary. And that describes at least part of why Debbie has suffered the way that she has. So now Debbie speaks and writes to encourage others who live in pain. And she has a book due out this fall. Yay. A book due out this fall called Trusting in Turmoil, Adjusting, Accepting, and Applying Truth Through Chronic Pain. And her website is anchoredandalive.org. Anchored, ANCHORED, and alive, all one word, .org. What else, Debbie? Anything else you want us to know about you that I've either missed or done wrong, said wrong, before we dive into some of the things?
Oh, thank you so much for letting me share this story, Angie. You have been such a blessing and an encouragement. And I too have found Flourish to not only help me in my writing, but to bring people into my life that really have encouraged me to tell my story and to step out when it's difficult to do this kind of thing and be confident that God has given each of us a story to share.
Yeah.
And we need to share it.
Yeah. Yes. That gives me chills just to hear you say it in that way. And it really does. And I've shared this story before. Other people have heard me share this story, but the first time that I openly, and I went through abuse when I was a teenager, and it was a public incident. So it wasn't like the story was private, but the first time that I began to talk about it, like not just what happened, but from my perspective and what God had done, and to really talk about the shame that I'd carried for 2 decades. I kind of threw up this prayer at the last minute. I was going to take it out. I'm like, I'm not going to do it, and all that. And my comment or my plea to God, and this goes with what you're saying, is they don't need my sad story. And I felt this impression upon my heart. This is one of the strongest. I've had lots of strong moments with God, but it was just like a spiritual marker in my life where he just reassured me and said, no, they do not need your sad story. They need your redemptive story. And that changed everything for me. And I believe that, Debbie. I believe that we are all a beautiful illustration of God's redemption. And the piece of that we can use from our lives, or pieces, we absolutely need to do that as much as possible and say, this is what happened to me, but this is what God has done, but God, right? So we're going to have a but God conversation this morning, and I am blessed and delighted to have you here, friend. Thank you so much for doing this with me. So in the years and sometimes since your diagnosis, you've talked to me when we did our little pre-interview conversation about feeling defeated, depressed, and disillusioned. And so talk to us a little bit about kind of what that place was and is like for you when you get there, and what helps you take steps out of it.
Okay, so I believe these 3 things happen at different times in your journey.
Okay.
Disillusionment happened when I got injured and thought a surgery was going to help me not live in pain anymore. And when that didn't happen, I became really disillusioned. Like, how do I do this? What do I do? The length of time that you're in pain can cause disillusionment, and how your life is impacted. And that doesn't just happen on the day of your pain. That has been a 13-year journey for me of living in different seasons of disillusionment. For me, defeat happened when doctors don't believe you, or you get all these tests back and they're negative, and nobody knows how to test you anymore. And you feel, and they say, it's all in your head. And that is a very defeating time. And I think depression happens when you choose to lock yourself away and your pain becomes a prison, and you choose to not unlock that door. And you can become very depressed. And I think it's what you say, you don't want people to know you live in pain, so you just keep quiet, and you don't know, and then you become so depressed. And how do you get through this? And I always say chronic pain is not for the weak. You have to decide if you're going to let your pain keep you in a place of defeat, depression, and disillusionment, or are you going to let God open that door and give you a different purpose and a different plan, and you're on a different path? So what are you going to do with that? And for me, the steps that I felt that I have taken to get out of it is I cried a lot in the beginning of this. And then I pray a lot. I pray a lot that God will help me not to have these feelings every day. I read my Bible, I listen to music. I want to say right up front, no matter where your journey is, you have to learn to be your own advocate. And that's probably early on in your chronic pain journey. Be your own advocate for your help. because there's not going to be a whole lot of people out there that are going to be an advocate for you. And don't give up. And my life-changing moment when I really believe that God allowed this journey and didn't punish me to be in this journey. He allowed me to walk it for reasons that we'll talk about later.
Okay. Yeah. I think you said, correct me if I misquote you, you said that chronic pain is not for the weak just now when you were saying that. Is that what you said? So, but I would venture a guess that chronic pain makes you, or at least can make you feel very weak, especially if doctors are telling you things are in your head, right? And so unpack that a little bit for me. If you know it's not for the weak and yet it makes you feel weak, how do you close the gap on that?
I think for me, looking back over that, I started this journey feeling like I couldn't be my own advocate. I couldn't fight for what I wanted. I felt weak and very embarrassed talking to people about chronic pain, going to appointments where doctors for 10 years did not believe that I had anything wrong with me. That puts you in a weak and embarrassing state, and you can stay there if you want to. And so my weakness is not about being maybe physically or maybe more emotionally weak.
Mm-hmm.
What chronic pain does for you, it gives you a backbone and it gives you strength to fight. Because you have to fight if you're in chronic pain to get out of bed every morning. You have to fight to get dressed a lot of mornings. You have to fight to want to find a new hobby. And I think that is where the weak versus the strong come in for people living with chronic pain. God will give you the strength to not be weak. Your resilience is going to grow so much in this journey. So, that, I guess, is what I consider what chronic pain has done for me. I started this journey pretty, can I do this? Nope, I can't. God has. So weak versus strength, according to that. I look at where I've come in the last 13 years. I don't, sorry.
You're fine.
I don't go into a doctor's office with my head held down low.
Did you at one point?
I did, because I was embarrassed when they said, this hip replacement helped you. What is your problem? There's nothing wrong with the hip replacement. And according to the x-rays, there was nothing wrong. It looked great. But there was something wrong. And so you get intimidated. Maybe intimidated is more the word that I need to say.
Well, sure, because they're smart and you're not, kind of, right? Yeah, they know what they're talking about and you don't, right? Yeah.
They make you feel stupid. You know, it is in your head. I've had a doctor say, this is all in your head. And I walked out of there going, oh my word, like I'm not going to be able to make it. And I am going to make it. And I am going to walk in there and say, there is something wrong with me and we need to find it. And if we don't, I'm leaving you to find someone else. That I feel like I have now after living in this.
Right. Yeah. You talked to me about some things that you call God's glory moments, and I loved that. I thought that was a beautiful way to talk about what you're describing. So what are those for you, God's glory moments, and why have they become so important to you?
The definition I use is God's glory moments are those times when I choose to see God's hand in the big, the little, and everyday life events. And that happened for me one day as I was out in my yard looking at my rose bushes. And I felt like God say, would you quit looking at the thorns all the time, Debbie? And would you start looking at the roses? And I am going to show you not only big things, because I think as a Christian, we say God does miracles. And it's like the big miracles of Jesus turning water into wine and all these things we read about. But what I have found on this journey is God does glory moments every day. If I stop and look at them, I live in a place where there's eagles and I love eagles, but eagles the last year for me have become a symbol of every time I see one, I felt God has brought that scripture to me. They that wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They will rise up with eagles, like wings as eagles. And Angie, every time we've had to wait for test results or I've had to for appointments that have been so long, I have seen an eagle
Mm.
in the air. And it was just a promise that God is there every day with me. One day I felt very alone, and I just really questioned, am I going to make it on this journey? And a bird flew on my windowsill in my bedroom. And the scripture in Matthew 6 that says, don't worry about anything. Look at the birds.
Mm-hmm.
For me, those were life-changing moments that God is with me every day. I just need to look for him.
Mm-hmm.
The Bleeding Edge documentary was a huge God moment for me, because we'd prayed for years that God would help me figure out what was wrong. And a guy that my husband worked with said, I think you need to watch this documentary. I think it would be good for you. It was the answer I needed. So those are the things that I really think that we as Christians need to look every day at what God does. And we sometimes just say, oh, that's just life. That's not life. That is Jesus saying, I am with you and I'm going to walk with you. Texts from people and friends, or flowers on my front porch, or someone saying, I want to make you a meal. Those are answers to prayer when you feel alone in chronic pain and you need someone to uplift you. Those are glory moments. And I just started looking at life differently.
I think that's beautiful. And I think in my own life, the greatest miracles that God has done in my life are the quiet times with him when I have found freedom from something I was holding on to for a long time. Like, that's just my story, where I didn't know that I didn't know that I could be free of this. And somehow through the time that we've spent together and the times that I've repeatedly lifted in prayer and the word that I've studied and all of that has come together in this moment. And maybe a song is playing or whatever. And I just feel this wash of release over me. And I just know that it's just this sanctification process, right? And I get to a point where I'm like, I know that is something that I've either overcome or he's brought his victory in or whatever. And so I totally get what you're saying in that, we want to say a miracle is like this healing that happens on the roadside, right? Like kind of like in a Bible story. But the healing and the miracles in our lives are the ones that change us. To me, this is me talking, the ones that change us more into his image in these like small, but over time, huge ways, right? It's the small things every day that add up to this huge change in our lives. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that this journey for me has made me realize Jesus is my friend.
Mm-hmm.
He does life with me.
Mm-hmm.
He cares about the eagles that fly and the birds that sit on my windshield.
Mm-hmm.
Those are times when I know that he's just not out there and the big God of the whole universe, but he is my personal friend that loves me beyond a shadow of a doubt. And he's willing to bring me those gifts and those treats to keep me faithful.
Yeah. So let's talk about your everyday life. Let's talk about your relationships. When I watched the documentary, one of the things that was so painful for me to watch was the men and women talking about how living in pain or dealing with a faulty medical product and the other things that were described in the documentary, because there's a large section about Debbie's hip product, but there are other things in the documentary as well. But the thing that struck me through like all of it, through the people that were dealing with this chronic, unexplained, at least for a time, illness, was the damage that it did on their most personal relationships. And so I just, to what degree you are willing, talk to us a little bit about some of the things, how this has negatively affected you and your, close circle, but maybe some positive, if there is some that you can share with us as well.
Okay. I liked this question.
Oh, good.
I did. It was hard for me to answer because I think we can stay in the negative as chronic pain people. So, the biggest negative is I live in constant pain every day. And every decision I make, I have to think of long-term, how is this going to make me feel tomorrow? Mm-hmm. How is this going to make me feel in 3 hours? So I'm very cautious of that.
So I'm going to stop you right there. So you approach life as I have this finite amount of energy. Is that fair to say? And so if I make this choice, it takes this much. And I'm sure after all this time, correct me if I'm wrong, but I see this happening. Like you evaluate, I know how much energy this takes, or I know and so I can only do I only have X amount. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah. So you're constantly probably evaluating and filtering those things. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't sit for long periods of time. I can't walk for long periods of time. And my pain becomes worse throughout the day. So the more you do, the more pain you have. That is a chronic pain. That just happens with chronic pain. So for me, negatively, I don't say yes to a lot of things now. Everything I say yes to is going to change my life in some way or help me to change someone's life, but it's not going to put me in bed for a week, which has happened. So negatively, I was very involved in church. I did a lot of things. I went to a lot of church functions and a lot of activities, and that stopped. And when that kind of stuff stops, friendships stop. Not because they don't like you, but you see people when you spend time with people. So
sober.
Yeah, you go to church every Sunday, you go to Bible study, women's Bible study, you see those people all the time. When you can't go there because you have a physical pain that cannot allow you to be there, your phone kind of quits ringing and people quit coming around. And it's not because they don't like you. I really want to say I have great friends. I just don't see them because I can't be where they are all the time. And life is busy for everybody. And so that is a negative thing for me. However, the positive thing for me is I used to go. I would be the one that volunteered for everything and did everything. And it wasn't that I maybe thought Jesus wanted me to, or that I loved it. It was just the Christian thing to do.
Amen. Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah.
Some of us are picking that up right now, Debbie. Yeah. We hear you.
I slowed down and I stopped. And what that did for me is my relationship with Jesus, Angie, has dramatically changed, because I find my worth not in going to all those functions anymore. I find my worth in Jesus and how much he loves me. And my purpose is to please him in this path. And I've learned how to do social media and Zoom calls and friends that live in chronic pain and can't do what I can't do, but they don't be alone.
Yeah.
And, a negative for me is my physical activity changed dramatically. I will never be able to run, but the positive, I never have to tell anybody I'm training for a marathon. That's not anymore. So I think you can take every negative and we have to turn it into a positive, or we're not going to make it through this journey. And I love the slow and simple of my life now. And 10 years ago, if you would have said, you're going to enjoy just sitting outside on your patio and reading for hours because you can't do nothing else, I would have said to you, wow, that's going to be the worst life ever. I don't know if I can do that. Now I say to you, what a gift and what a treasure. Oh, I might cry. It's Jesus,
okay.
And how much joy has come from the season of just waiting on him and living life really like I feel like for this season is as how he wants me to live it. So
go ahead.
Let me tell this. I just did this.
Go ahead.
I read this quote by Phyllis Unkefer. It says, dance with possibility. It can carry us into moments of creativity as surprising as wildflowers. For me, that's what pain did. I experience the beauty of the wildflowers now. I don't know if I did that before. I didn't dance in fields, and I didn't enjoy the beauty, the simple beauty that God has placed around my life.
When we surrender to hustle, whatever that looks like in our lives, and I have been a slave to the hustle of productivity so that I could be worthwhile for years, and that's still a big temptation for me. I confess that frequently. But when we surrender to the hustle, there is so much that we miss. And I appreciate your perspective on that. I think that's one of the things that has been possible through our shelter in place. As families, as people, when so many things, I know for me, it's been challenging at times, but there's been this huge almost relief when I began to erase the commitments on my calendar. This is canceled. This is canceled. And there were some things that were really painful to erase, but there were some things that were just like, but I don't have to do this, or I don't have to get ready for the, and some of that just reminded me. And I was on a walk with my husband recently, and I was shedding a few tears myself because I feel our world began to open up a little bit, and I'm a little bit afraid of what that means is coming back into my life and forgetting that I have a choice, that it's my choice. But, I just confessed with him that there's been parts of this that I have really, really appreciated. And it's made me more aware of the choices that I have when sometimes I give that choice away, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And I think as women, we find our identity in going, and doing. And when all that is ripped away because of chronic pain, it can leave you pretty bewildered.
It kind of like, it's a refining process too, I would think, where it kind of like, when all of this is stripped away, who am I? And that's both the beautiful and the scary thing, right? Because am I valuable? And this is a question for all of us. Am I valuable at the heart of me? When you take away everything I can do, if you take away whatever, all of that, and this is just the heart of me, can I still sit with myself and know that I am loved and cherished, by my creator? And also, hopefully for most of us, all of us, I hope, by a few, because most of us don't have the number of close friends that we have friends on Facebook, right? Yeah. But the few close people that are the people God has put in our life to walk this with us. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't come easy.
No. No.
But when you can get there, it's huge.
Well, it's unshakable. It's incorruptible. Like when you can sit with yourself and be comfortable, then no matter what you face, no one can take that from you.
Right.
No one can take that from you. So, yeah. So I think strengthening our faith has to do in part with being honest, as we've been talking about doubts and fears and questions. And you talked to me when we were chatting earlier about some tough prayers in the midst of your suffering. And so what's that? What is that like? And how did that help you to pray what you're calling tough prayers?
So I guess they were more questions that I asked God.
Sure.
There were two. Why, God, is this happening to me? And did my sin cause this pain? And when everything was happening and I was realizing the permanent damage, I did go talk to a counselor and try to process everything. And in that meeting, he said to me, Debbie, why is a question that 2-year-olds answer or ask? And you may never get the answer to that. And for me, that answer was like, because I realized God doesn't have to answer the whys. He doesn't have to give me a reason why this is happening. He doesn't. What changed for me that day was, no matter what he takes away, no matter what happens on this journey, my why changed to, God, I will trust you no matter what you take away from me. I will believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that you have allowed this to happen to me for a reason. That is what I took away from that. A tough question that I can't stay in the why. Mm-hmm. And we as chronic pain, we can't stay there, guys, because that's going to destroy us. And the other one was, did my sin cause my pain? I know as Christians, there are some Christians that say that sin caused your pain. I've been told that. And that sent me to my knees. And not because I felt like sin caused my pain, but if it did, I wanted to pray and ask God to forgive me of that. So that was the first thing I really prayed. And the scripture, Romans 3:23, where it says, we've all sinned. We've all come short of the glory of God. You guys, we're not in heaven. And whether you're a Christian or a non-Christian, there's pain in this world. There's suffering. There's disillusionment about life. And staying in those places and thinking that I caused this, I did this to myself, I did something that is unforgivable, and Jesus is going to punish me with everyday pain. I just didn't believe that was what God was saying to me. And he gave me the scripture. So one day I was praying, God, show me. If I'm going to live this way, show me why. Not why this is happening to me, but what can I do to make this better? And the scripture, 1 Corinthians 1:3-4 says, the Father comforts you in your suffering so that you will be able to comfort others. And I just felt like God said, Debbie, I'm doing this to give you comfort. I want you to give encouragement. I want you to give hope, but more than anything, I want you to show Jesus on this journey. Mm-hmm. And those were the two really big prayers that I needed answers to.
I so appreciate you being honest about that, because I think whenever we face something really challenging, those are pretty natural, pretty normal responses to this. Hey, my life isn't supposed to look this way. I don't know how I got here and I don't like it. Right. And we ask this question: if you really loved me, if you really care for me, if you're really watching me, then how is this my reality? Right. And I think a couple of things around that. I think that for most of us, there's not a why that he could give us that would satisfy us anyway. There's not. And, as trite as it sounds, just as you were saying, we live in a fallen world. And to like boil your incident down to the lowest place, if you will, the fact of the matter is we live in a world where some people will poison you or put a faulty product in you so they get richer. That's right. The world that we live in. Most people won't do that, but some people will. And then there's terrible consequences to that. Yeah. And that's the reality in which we live, right? And so the why is it's a fallen world, but as you said, but it's not forever. This is not your home. And I will be with you as you walk through whatever it is that you're facing right now. And I think you're right that there is reason for our suffering. But the reason, right? And disagree with me if you want to, it's fine. But the reason is so that we will cling to him, so that we will get to know him. I don't know anyone who's experienced God in the valleys, right? Who would say, and I would have experienced him that way if I'd never gone through that, right? We recognize as humans, as Christians, we recognize there's something that we are willing to receive from him in our dark moments that we kind of don't even think about needing. Right. In different seasons of our life. I don't know. Yeah. It's, right. I don't know. Feel free to disagree with me if you want, but those are just the things that are like coming as I listen to you talk. Yeah.
There's people that I have watched for years because they're Christians and they live this amazing godly life. And I'm like, oh, I wished I could be like them. They just love so much. Then you hear their story and you're like, I don't need to know how that feels. You got in that place because of something that happened to you, that you had to turn to Jesus, because if you didn't, you were not going to make it. And I say often, has this journey been hard, Angie? It has been hard. I would not trade.
It is hard. Yeah.
I would not trade what I have learned from sitting at the feet of Jesus. Yeah. And reading my Bible and knowing what he has done for me for anything, because when the end comes, when all this is over, that is what it's going to be. People come into your life, people go. Your pain changes, your pain stays the same. Jesus never fails.
Yeah.
He never fails. He's with you in it all.
Yeah, I'm so with you on that. And I just, a lot of people know in 2010, I was in a head-on car collision and I was hurt really bad and had a lot of surgeries, and my son, and it was one of the most difficult, especially physical experiences of my life thus far. And if you would have told me in those early days, 10 years ago, that I would someday thank God for that experience, I would have asked you to leave my presence because it was just so awful. And it's just like, I can't hear that right now. I couldn't have heard that right now. 10 years later, with all that he's done in my heart and in my life, not because of it, kind of because of it, through it, as a result of it, however you want to, I thank him for his allowing me to suffer like that, because I know something about him that I would not have known otherwise. Yeah. And that's what I hear you saying too. I can just I relate to that, and have had different but similar experiences, because he allows all of us to choose him when we're suffering. Right. It's a choice that we can make. Yeah. In the little things, like you're saying, the glory moments, that's what you call them, right? The glory moments of God, they can be so small, but so impactful as we journey. So let's talk about grief just for a few minutes before we wrap up here, because I believe we're on the same page about this. When you lose something, you grieve it, and constant pain involves loss. And so talk to me just a little bit about grief and how that goes with chronic pain, and also just kind of the importance of acknowledging and grieving what you've lost?
So for me, grief came out of the blue. I never thought I was going to grieve. I'm going to be honest. This was just not thing I thought I was going to happen.
This is a place to be honest. That's what we want. I think that's what encourages people to be like, this was terrible. No, I mean it.
This is life. I'm sorry I lost this. Oh, well,
No,
go.
Some days are really terrible. Yeah.
I was at my occupational therapist appointment. She was getting ready to do, nobody can touch my legs. She was there. They were going to do some leg work. She said, Debbie, do you use oils? Can I put some oils on you? And I'm like, yeah. And I said, what kind of oils are you using? And she said, oh, it's just a blend to calm you down. One of the oils has grief stuff to deal with grief in it. And I got mad, Angie. I said to her, I am not grieving. Really kind of like that. And she said,
like you were offended almost. Was that fair? Yeah.
I said, I came in here smiling. I really tried to do this, the positive God.
Put my happy face on for you.
I've been kind. And she said, Debbie, you walked in here with a smile on. You have always been kind to me. You've always smiled, but you have gone through a traumatic life event and you have to grieve that. And Angie, immediately, tears just started flowing from my eyes. I couldn't wipe them off fast enough. I was embarrassed because she was watching me, because I was so adamant. I am not grieving. And she said, when you go through this, you have to grieve. And for the next hour, literally, I could not quit crying. It was horrible. I just was like, this is not. I got in the car. I literally cried all the way home. Just this sorrow. For weeks. Yeah. And in that, I felt like there's two questions that you will sink into the pit of the sand if you stay here. And it is what used to be and what if. You have to let go of your what used to be. I lost my job. We lost my dream home because it had too many stairs. I couldn't walk up it. Our finances have been crazy because of medical bills. I read a story about a lady who sat in front of her closet with her high-heeled shoes in her hand, grieving because she couldn't wear them anymore. I know that. I wear the ugliest shoes ever because I have to walk. And in Psalms, it talks about, I weep with sorrow. And that's where I was. I was like, okay, God, here it all is. Everything, I'm laying at your feet. Yeah. I had to file for disability. That was the hardest thing, when you get the paper with bright red letters that says you're disabled. I don't want to be disabled. Right. That's my dream. And so you grieve the losses of everything we've talked about. You grieve not going out with your friends or shopping at a mall for hours. But Ashley Davis writes this little quote thing. It says, you won't ever be your old self again. Yeah. You are growing into a new self that is born out of that grief. And what I've learned is discovery of my new self takes bravery. It's not easy to
stop right there. Say that again. Discovery. Listen up, people. Discovery of my new self. Go ahead.
Takes bravery.
Takes bravery. Yes. Amen. Go ahead. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. And it is not easy to reinvent. We talk about identities. You are reinventing your whole life. You're making something new. And so my prayer in that time was, God, restore my soul and heal my disappointments and reassure me that I won't be alone in this, that you're going to walk with me. And my biggest one is rescue me from feeling that my what used to be was better than my what is.
Yes.
And for weeks, you guys, I processed this.
Rescue me from believing my what used to be is better than my what is. That's powerful stuff, Debbie. Yeah.
And then I just felt like God said to me, pour out your painful losses in the presence of God. Yeah. Who will pick up the pieces, you guys. Yeah. And he will provide you peace in that process. Yeah. And God, I so believe that there is a purpose for your pain. And it's going to open doors for you. I never thought I would write a book. I never thought I would talk about chronic pain. I never thought that I would tell my story. but the opportunities and just the different way I live my life. Painting, who thought I could paint? I can't even draw a straight line, but you just learn new things. Yeah. And I encourage you to let go, you guys, because God is going to open doors for you that you're going to love even more.
Yeah. I think that's so true. And the importance of grieving what was and what I thought would be and will not be. I think it's important to grieve that both directions. I have asked Debbie to finish with a story that really has to do about friendship. But before we do that, because I don't think you can see the comments, I want to just read a couple of the comments so that you know what kind of friends that you have out here. And that from Jill Wilson, she says, I'm relating to everything said. So thankful you've addressed this need to grieve and reinvent and embrace what is. Don Smith says, amazing conversation. Karen Patrick says, you have been a beacon to so many, shining the light of Jesus to help others. Love you. Don Smith again, Deb is a treasure at her core, and only she knows the pain that has produced her testimony. She has always had a precious spirit that I admired when we were together in college a long time ago. Well, probably not that long ago. No, I just teasing.
A long time ago.
And they kind of go on. And so I was going to see if I could see any more real quick for you, but so you have some encouragement out there. Yes, very much so. And we appreciate those who've been watching. And I asked, Debbie told me this story when we were on the phone, and Debbie, I want you to tell me the story about, because one of the things that we have in common, not only are we Flourish writers, but we are both Disney girls. And that is a very important connection that we have. And so I want you to share this story before we close. Go ahead. You know what it is, because I already asked you to do it. So
I love Disneyland. My oldest daughter adores Disneyland, and we have a friend named Rebecca who also loves Disneyland. And so the three of us have traveled to Disneyland a few times. And after, right before in the middle of all of this, Kristen came to me. Kristen is my oldest daughter. Rebecca is my friend, and said, Mom, we need to go to Disneyland again with Rebecca. And I said, I can't go to Disneyland, Kristen. I can't even walk. How am I going to make it to Disneyland? And she said, Mom, get a powered wheelchair. We will get you to Disneyland. I'm like, no. And really for 2 days, I just was like, no, I'm not going to be in a wheelchair. Pride. And I am not realizing what was happening in my life. I just didn't want to be in a wheelchair because that was embarrassing to me. And so one day I just felt this impression, Debbie, you're going to live in pain in bed and be here, or you can live in pain in Disneyland. Go to Disneyland. So I took
a day in pain at Disneyland is better than a day in pain anywhere else. I love this. We could put that on a t-shirt. I love it.
So we called Rebecca. We planned everything. We booked a powered wheelchair to be delivered to the motel, which was 1 mile away from Disneyland. We got there, and when they delivered it, they said, here's a phone number. If the wheelchair breaks down, you call us. We'll come and get it. Have a great time. The next morning we get up, get into Disneyland. We're there all day. The power light has never changed. It has been on the whole time, looking like I have not used any power. We stay for the fireworks show. We leave, we get all the way out to the front gates, about ready to get to the place where we are leaving downtown Disney, and the wheelchair stops, just shuts down. And we could not get it going. And all of those fears of,
oh yeah,
I'm disabled, I can't walk. What is going on? This is too heavy. And what am I doing? And we tried the number, and it was, thank you so much for calling. Our office is closed. Call in the morning. And Angie, just this overwhelming defeat, if you want to talk about defeat, and what on earth did I do, just came over me.
And can I pause right there? And every time you sat in a doctor's office and felt stupid, and every time you thought, I'm never going to get back my life the way I want it to. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say all of those feelings that you've been like kind of trying to keep at bay a little bit, that monster of those negative feelings, all of a sudden just were right upon you as you sat in that wheelchair that would not move, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yes. Go ahead.
Rebecca comes around the front and she said, Debbie, we're going to push you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, you're not. One, the wheelchair weighs a lot. If I would have went on a diet before this happened, it would have been better, but I didn't.
Well, there's a whole other issue of feelings. Yeah, that's all.
all of those feelings. And I said, no, you're not. That's too much work.
Yeah.
And Angie, as I'm saying it, Kristen and Rebecca get behind my wheelchair and start pushing it.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And here we go. And tears are just, I just felt like God said, you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
But on the way, we met this family of 4. We're talking to them. All these people are like, are you okay? Do you need help? For 1 mile up a hill, they pushed my wheelchair. Mm-hmm. And as we got into the lobby of the motel, we just burst into laughing. It was uncontrollable laughing. And I think they were exhausted. But it was this bond. And I felt like God said, Debbie, you are not alone. Yeah. I am going to give you friends that are going to help you walk this. And Mark 2:3-4 talks about 4 men that had a friend that was disabled. He was crippled. And they picked up his bed and they carried it to a home. And they cut a roof in the top of it, the house, you guys, and they put him down through it. Yeah. And in that moment, I felt like God said, I am going to do that for you. You don't have to walk this alone. And as chronic pain people, we think we have to walk this alone. You guys don't live in chronic pain alone. God has placed people in your life that will help you. And if he hasn't, you write me and we're going to pray that God's going to give you that. You don't do this alone. Reach out, ask for prayer, find a support group, join anchoredandalive.org and let me pray for you and help you through this. I just realized in that moment that God truly had years ago given me Rebecca and my daughter, Kristen. And I do life with them because they love me, because I'm broken. They love me because I've had difficulties. They didn't leave. They were willing to push the wheelchair for me when I couldn't do it myself. And I just, for all of you out there, if you're hurting and you're alone, I just want to say to you, you're not alone, you guys. You're not alone. Jesus is so close to you, and he will give you what you need to walk this journey with it, your head held high, and some support from some really amazing people.
I think I can say this confidently, that this is not the road that you would have chosen for yourself, that you're not glad that this is where you are. And yet we see the beauty in you and in what you have learned and been willing to share through this situation. And I don't think there's any of us that can't identify with being stuck in the wheelchair, right? And it won't go. And we have no choice. Well, we do. We have a choice to sit there and be sorrowful or get bitter or whatever and just stay stuck. Or we can accept the gift of friendship and love that God has put in our life and let them push us for a little while. And I'm terrible at that. I'm so bad at it, which is probably one of the reasons that story really, spoke to me, because I just want to push myself. Thank you very much, And I think probably a lot could identify with that. But I have so much to learn still about what God offers us, not just in his spirit and as he speaks to our heart, but in the people that he puts in our lives to encourage us and push us forward. And so before we close, first, thank you so much for your tenderness and your openness and your willingness to share. We're all better for it today. Also, though, I do want to mention again, Debbie's website is Anchored and Alive. What can they find on your website, Debbie?
They can find, I have just started a page for chronic people that live in chronic pain, and just
on Facebook.
On Facebook.
Okay, you can find you there too. Then both the same, Anchored and Alive.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
And just encouragement and help and support and some. I just feel like that being a part of a page or a support group of people that understand your journey.
It's community.
Yeah. Answer the questions. Be involved.
Yeah.
Don't be alone. I mean, we have been isolated because of COVID, but you don't have to be isolated because of COVID. Yeah. Social media has taken off, and there's a lot of people that are willing to walk with you and pray for you. I mean, we're miles and miles apart, and because of social media and what is happening my prayers reach heaven here in Washington.
Yeah.
Hallelujah for that. Yours do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter where we are, we can pray and uplift each other.
Yeah. Well, I will put those, for those who are watching or listening later, I will put Debbie's information in the episode notes so you can find it. I will also link the trailer to the Bleeding Edge documentary in case you're interested in checking that out. And again, Debbie, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a blessing. And we are going to sign off and say bye and peace.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome. One of the things Debbie said that will stay with me was discovery of my new self takes bravery. I have found that to be so true in my own life, and at times I take steps forward and then backward in that journey. But I know the discovery of who God has created me to be is an endeavor worth pursuing. If you'd like more information on where you can find Debbie's work, I've added all that great stuff in the show notes, along with the YouTube link to the trailer of the Bleeding Edge documentary that we talked about. Thank you so much for listening, friend. I pray that wherever your day takes you, you are walking in the confident knowledge that you are a beloved, cherished child of God. Peace.